Welcome back, everybody, for the Innovation in Water and Wastewater Treatment Plants. Moving swiftly on, we have Brent Mouty here from CH2M Hill from the USA, and I will over to you, Brent, and I'm timing you.
Thank you. And I am from Canada, not from the USA. I'm here to present our City of Las Vegas wastewater pollution control facility. It's an infrastructure replacement project that we'll learn a bit about today. Quick image of the plant. If you're familiar with Las Vegas, the actual strip is in the distance there. So this is well away from the stereotypical Vegas. The project involved modeling a 60-plus-year-old wastewater treatment plant that had a tremendous amount of record information, and you can only imagine the state of the content when we found it, including a $20 million US upgrade to the program, focusing on increasing the water quality. Now, this water is important because you could imagine in the middle of the desert, water is not robust. So this feeds part of the infrastructure that is supported by the water treatment plant, where the treated wastewater eventually ends up at the water treatment plant, along with pumped raw water to then service the people of Las Vegas. The project wanted to be conceived of as an asset to the community, so they wanted a full documentation of the existing infrastructure. So they asked us to model the exteriors of non-process buildings, so you can see everything in sight, the exterior and interior of process, including piping, equipment, etc. The generation of intelligent P&IDs. So these instrumentation diagrams, they wanted them fully intelligent, based on the existing, based on the history of this plant. That was a tremendous undertaking. Underground pipes and utilities, which was quite the task in itself, and my favorite part of it was a linkage to the asset management system or facility management system, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. Just a little peel-away shot showing the intricacies of the exterior versus the interior. This is just one facility. There's, as I said, I think I said 16 facilities that go off onto the entire plant. So we have quite a list of Bentley tools that were used, and I'm going to highlight a process diagram between them. But when we look at this vast collection of tools, CH2M Hill stands back and says, well, how do we manage this? So before I talk about the tools, let's look at what they are. So we've got building, civil, and plant, and they're all unique. So when we deploy building information modeling, we focus on these three focus areas. We understand the authorship of content that comes from these three areas. We want to put them together and package them. Oops, I got click happy there. Put them together and package them around a common platform and series of hardware. In that common platform, we're able to manage content, manage document, manage interrelationships, review and interact with the data, and harness the data for downstream uses or for reporting. And then hardware is your typical, you need desktop servers, connectivity, secured cloud connection, which was something we'll talk about in a moment, as well as we deploy some hardware acceleration. Now, we had to take our information and ensure portions of it could get utilized and transferred into the owner's repository, as well as other repositories. And this is a generic slide, so there was one other repository with respect to civil information. And we package all of that with information exchanges. And that could be a database export. So that is taking the content, exporting it to a format, XML, Excel, Access, etc., for delivery into another application. Information model turnover. More and more clients say, give me your raw DGN files. We want to leverage them and create as operated models throughout the duration. Or BIM exports. iModels are our favorite ones, but there could be IFCs or other such exports. So we'll start with ProjectWise as the glue. ProjectWise allowed us to bring everything together and provided interoperability and integration with all of the other Bentley-based applications. Our civil solution was Inroads V8i that allowed us to create a digital train model, the surface and undersurface conditions of our existing site, and gave us a medium through which to model the yard piping. The building model was done with V8i SS1, Bentley Building. This project occurred or was substantially started before the implementation of EcoSim, so we chose not to upgrade. But it was V8i, there was integration and the ability to reference and share data, geometric data, to and from building and civil. Now from the plant perspective, then we have our deliverable, which is MicroStation V8i, and the ability for both of the intelligent applications to feed that deliverable in a common sheet environment. From a plant perspective, focusing on process mechanical equipment, piping, which come complete with line numbers and components associated to them, as well as our intelligent P&IDs. This project was substantially completed prior to our use of OpenPlant. So we have PlantSpace XM as our piping medium with our customized SQL database backbone. PlantSpace gives us the ability to live reference across building, civil, and plant, as well as feed MicroStation for common deliverables. Even though PlantSpace is in the XM platform, we have the ability to utilize the V8i suite for everything else other than the use of PlantSpace. For intelligent P&IDs, this was one of our first OpenPlant P&ID projects. So it was actually started in SS3. The schemas were then upgraded to SS4 because there was some heavy customization with respect to tagging, flow streams, and specific component types that the client required to see. OpenPlant P&ID, like the others, integrates with MicroStation. It sits on the MicroStation engine as a Power App, as well as has an indirect relationship to PlantSpace. And I mean indirect because it's direct with OpenPlant. Here we had to manually do comparison and consistency checks between PlantSpace and P&ID. And this was also one of our first pilot BRCM projects, so Bentley Raceway and Cable Management. We jumped on this tool when it was released because it gave us the ability to parametrically model cable trays and have a potential for intelligence of the content housed within. Ultimately, we're giving a deliverable, MicroStation DGNs. Now, I got AutoCAD in there, and that was for our Civil 3D. And we'll talk about that in 1 second. And then i.dgn files as well as PDFs and an integration between the two, which was critical for our client. Navigator and Adobe is our design review tool. So the client was fascinated with the concept of a 3D PDF, and then our models became too big for a 3D PDF. And then Bentley rolled out, well, just take an iModel and shove it into a PDF. And what a concept that was. The clients were ecstatic, and we'll talk about what we did with that in a moment. We also had Civil 3D as an add-on to Inroads, and that add-on was for a portion of the site that was done by a local civil sub-consultant that was Civil 3D only, so it allowed us to challenge the Civil 3D data shortcut integration with ProjectWise in order to leverage and utilize Civil 3D internally. So ProjectWise is our glue, and I feel like I'm a broken record saying ProjectWise, but it allowed us to collaborate, pulled us 18 unique facilities together, iModel deliverable for each. We had 8 CH2ML offices plus the external entity, and the external entity was the AutoCAD-based entity, 14,000 files, 15 gigabytes of information. So for us to manage this from CH2ML standpoint, we needed to maintain our efficiency. So this is my boilerplate slide, create, manage, deliver, and preserve. So we manage the content, we create what we need to meet our client's deliverable, we deliver it, and we preserve the content for future use. So one example of preservation was the workflow for Civil 3D and ProjectWise. We tested it, we tried it, it's now globally deployed CH2ML. The other one, BRCM, its ability to allow data to feed and synchronize to and from a SQL database, giving us our intelligent cable trays. We tested the workflow, we tried it, and it's now a globally deployed workflow for us to use in the CH2ML. ProjectWise is a series of servers. I like to call it Puppet Master with a bunch of puppets. So our corporate data center, we have redundancy in that. That's where our orchestration is. Server-side PDFs, storage of all of our content. Everything is managed in the data center, mirrored between Denver and London for backup redundancy and disaster restore. Each office has a local caching server and just local distribution, so we're able to take the content, Delta file transfer it, leverage it local on our hard drives, local on our offices, and enhance the speed of access to information for all of our users internally. We have the gateway through the internet providing instant access as well to anybody outside of CH2ML. That allowed us to leverage the Civil 3D content and share the information to and from our local offices outside and back and forth. Pre-ProjectWise, I still don't know how we actually did it and did it right, but this has just made life so much easier. So Puppet Master and Puppets, it works perfectly. So with ProjectWise, we want to remove the need to stay connected to networks or cloud services while working. So we've built a tool to help us with this concept called Resource Manager. And what Resource Manager does is it sits on top of the DLL of ProjectWise and intercepts the open command for files. So why do we do that? So ProjectWise is great for sharing the references, sharing all of the 2D and 3D files that interact and exchange with each other, uses Delta files so that if it's on my C drive and I have it and it's current, I'm just accessing and it works fine. It works great for the large files, but then we get to the resources. CAD data sets are huge, specifically the building data set that is, I think, about 3,000 files within it. So we use this Delta file transfer concept to say, I'm going to access the system, check out my file. And when I open it, bring me all my references, or just verify that I have them. Give me my Delta file update. We're then going to look at resources. So this is our interception. Prior to launching the file, we're going to look to see if I've got gigabytes worth of information local on my C drive. And if I do, I'm good. If I don't, ProjectWise is going to do something for me. And what it does is it scans our records, whether it's a globally deployed resource or in this case, a project deployed resource. We have customized DGN libs. We have customized plant space, customized Bentley building, customized open plant PNID. All of that catered unique to the project. It looks for those resource files, copies them local. So we've got, 9 files there. Those 9 files get Delta file transferred. If they're current, they're good. If they're not, I get the Delta of those 9 files. Then it deploys. It synchronizes from my Delta file transferred resources and deploys all of the content to my C drive, and then our project configuration is pointing C drive specific. The benefit of that works internal, external, it doesn't matter. It saves us bringing down almost 5,500 files for local caching and Delta verification. So you can imagine verifying 9 versus 5,500. Now we're talking, fractions of a second per file, multiplied by 5,500, multiplied by more and more as data sets get bigger. This is our time saver for us when we're working within our environment. The other thing Resource Manager does, if you'll notice, I've got 3 XML files. So plant-based tools, BRCM, PlantSpace, OpenPlant, PNID, all require registry settings in order to work. It sets your project routes for OpenPlant, PNID. It sets the location of your SQL databases for PlantSpace and Raceway and Cable Management. Well, what Resource Manager does is it gives us the ability to automatically set those registry settings for any user who opens a document from the project within ProjectWise. No need to share around reg files and coordinate and make sure people's systems are all up to date. Huge time saver from a global deployment perspective. So the BIM goals on the project, this is my typical wheel of BIM. We were doing drawings and schedules as a requirement. Design review has to happen. We drive through the models. We show the client what we've done and how we've done it. Visualization, it was pretty heavy on this project. There was a lot of interaction with the community to show what we're doing, what we're building. It wasn't just about the mods, but it was about the entire infrastructure as a whole. Clash detection, we have some examples of running that. And then this is my extension of the wheel of BIM to what you do beyond design during construction and operations. So clash detection continued, design review becomes constructability review, and our heavy focus was asset management and operations. So the visualization, a couple of images were generated throughout the duration of the project just to give the stakeholders an idea of what's going on. We clashed interdiscipline, so beams in ducts, equipment in walls, penetrations that were not accounted for. This allowed us to quickly check how we were doing with the existing modeling as well as the modifications to the new. We generated reports, clashes of interest. We made a markup of them in Navigator and communicated and mitigated the clash and acted accordingly. So all disciplines were virtually coordinated, and that was a huge thing for us. No matter where we were working from this project across the globe, everybody was working in the same virtual space. Our BIM execution plan was completed with a robust process map, but we took the process map and the level 2 process maps, if you're familiar with the Penn State plan, they want a level 2 for each BIM goal. But from our perspective, whether we're quantities, class to takeoff, asset management exports, etc., we're all following the same general process where we kick off, we coordinate, we've got a point of accountability. We call it project automation leader, your pal, so come, I'll be your pal, I'll help you do BIM, right? That's our accountable person. We go through this iterative cycle of analyzing, finding clashes, building models, finding clashes, analyzing over and over and over again until we're ready for our deliverables, whether it's a record model or the content for delivery, which includes exports of the BIM model. So the requirements were PDFs and DGNs for all of the sheet files for the new modification, iModels of all the 18 facilities scattered across the site, and then the linkages between the FM and BIM. Now, I mentioned the customization, so I won't dwell on that, and then the Civil 3D configuration, we were able to leverage that with ProjectWise. So from the iModels, the client was fascinated with the concept of seeing the model in the PDF and interrogating and touching the model virtually from the PDF. So we started creating deliverables of, instead of making drawings, because they already had existing record drawings and they were nothing to write home about, so we gave them existing drawings of iModels and they loved it. They could query, they could see what's in there. We then started to look and say, let's talk about their assets of importance. Now this AOI, this is my, I guess, coined phrase, but when people say BIM into asset management, it's not absolutely everything, right? I'm not going to BIM this building and say, I got to get this material here into asset management. It's not going to happen. So the client looked and said, these are the things, the pumps, the valves, the owner-operated equipment that are pertinent to the treatment of the plant, to the purpose of the plant. So with each component that was placed, they all carried a unique identifier, a pump number, that had a linkage, that number drove to a specific specification, and that built a relationship around what that pump meant. But they wanted to be able to click on that pump and get to their operation system. So we had to understand where we were going to. So from the pump, we had linkages to specific screens in their O&M, in their operation screen. And from that operation screen, this pump controls the centrifuges. And they can get an information readout of those 3 centrifuges. And then they said, well, we want to know more about those centrifuges. So they're going to go and click one of those, and it will bring up the operation and maintenance manual. And the O&M manual, then completing the full round trip, would then once again have that very same iModel embedded within with a view unique to that component. And you can still interrogate and move around, but the default view of that O&M model is the component that they link to from the operational system, which was in turn linked to from the deliverable, which was the iModel. So it's an amazing trip for us, and we only did it for the assets of importance. You can imagine doing this for absolutely everything. It just wouldn't be feasible or right for that matter. So the project outcome, we had data validation, design coordination emphasized throughout the 14-month process. Consistency of standards and workflows. Everybody was working on the same thing. Nobody had anything unique, including the registry settings and the components required to fundamentally drive the plant-based tools. Clashes were found and addressed during design. Synergy between building, civil, plant, and platform. That synergy allowed us to take laptops, go into the plant, sit down and model with connection to Wi-Fi into ProjectWise, and everything was good. That whole consistency empowered our modelers to model on-site without any worries about being disconnected or not using the correct content or standards. The client's tagging scheme and standards were facilitated. P&IDs were built based on that content. That intelligence then carried into we made iModels of the P&IDs, and those iModels were then part of the P&ID deliverable as well. So the data, those P&IDs were as data rich as possible when delivered to the client as a PDF. And finally, the assets of importance were linked to the FM system and their O&M manual. And again, it's just the ones of importance, the ones that brought value to the client. So in conclusion, the tools were used as a design medium, but focus was never diverted from the main goal, which was an advanced record of a wastewater treatment system. The project spans the life cycle. It started in 2009, and we reached substantial just recently. So the entire life cycle of the system, multidiscipline design, integration of data models, from design straight through to what's sitting there in the operator's hand when they're trying to operate this plant. BIM, for us, continues to prove to be distributable across the global network. Doesn't matter where we are. If I'm sitting in Toronto, I'm sitting in Sydney, London, Singapore, Denver, who cares? We're working on projects empowered by ProjectWise to truly globally deliver. And asset management is a viable BIM goal when pursued strategically and intelligently. And the iModels helped us to do that. And I chuckle when I do external presentations and I hear, BIM for asset management. Well, what do you mean? And it's just the blank look. If you don't know what you want, then you cannot achieve it because everything cannot be put into an asset management system. Questions? Am I okay? You didn't wave the stop flag. Thank you.
Breathe.
Yes. Those were a lot of words.
Any questions at all? Yep. Any questions? I shall bring. Yes, you can.
This concept of asset of importance.
Yes.
Is it first introduced here or was it before?
If it was introduced elsewhere, I haven't seen it. So I told my internals that I just made up that phrase. If it's elsewhere, that's great. But for me, that's my concept, to direct clients to say, tell me which one. Because they all talk about, you need to get my assets into asset management. Like, well, what does that mean, right? So I've really started saying, give me the asset of importance. And for water and wastewater treatment, it's usually pumps and valves and anything that's electrically operated.
Okay, well, it's a clever concept. Question: why do you choose this project? Because CH2M Hill is is a large EPC and has a lot of projects executed.
That's an interesting question.
So what is here unique?
Well, for me, it was
standard procedures. Yeah.
It was the full application of BIM from start to finish. So we have several projects where, when I go back to that BIM goals chart, we do some of the goals, but not all of the goals. And this was the first one where we actually did a little bit of everything straight to the end. And we had a client that was truly driving it. So there was no, can we do it? Should we do it? Let's think about it. Here, when we started the project, the client said asset management is of prime importance. So we knew we had to do this right from the very beginning of the project, and it was the challenge for me to understand, okay, great, after talking about BIM for almost a decade, how are we actually going to realize a very specific asset management need? Versus, like, if you look at any of these other ones, I think we could all figure out, or we've seen it done, but this is truly the hardest because it's so uniquely to the client. And if we don't understand, it's either guesswork or it's potentially useless work.
So Brent, can you talk to what value the city of Las Vegas was looking for, and did you deliver that?
Right. So their problem statement to us. So we had the design, right? We had to do the modification so they hopefully have better quality water. Value number one, right? But they said, when we started saying, well, we don't know how to model this plant because there's no information. All of their records were all over the place. 60 years of retrofits were never fully documented correctly. So the value to them is the turnover of an as-built asset to the community. So their idea is that as time goes on, they conceive of this as potentially an as-operated model. Changes will be updated in the model and then reflected and given back to the community, saying, as the community grows and we all retire, you're not going to be saddled with an asset of unknown. Here are all the models. Here's how it all integrates together. If you don't know what's in the O&M manual, well, you can drive to it in the model, click on the asset of importance, end up to where we operated, end up to the manual, and it brings all the information together for the generations that are going to inherit this plant. All right.
You have it on this chart, plus you made a point a couple of times about the visualization activity, a point that you made. Can you share a little bit of your sense around the value that both the construction and the operations people get from that aspect of this type of work?
From a visualization standpoint, I think the target is more so for the client during design and the contractor if they're involved during constructability reviews. So to very quickly, you have the stack of paper. But for me, I think the greatest value is more to the external stakeholders. So when the client has to sit in front of community groups to say, this is what we're doing, it's hard enough for us to read drawings. For non-design or non-engineering architecture, it's just irrelevant, really. The drawing doesn't mean anything. So it brought the value for them. And it's also, this client liked the wow factor, so the ability to quickly update them with respect to where we are with respect to their design. And then also, because the deliverable was iModels, it gave them a little hint on what would show up in that final PDF with embedded iModel, because they see a quick view of a visualization.
Penetrating a bit more at the innovation on this particular project for CH2M Hill, you mentioned, I know you have integrated multidiscipline approach with ProjectWise on many of your projects, and you said this one added raceway and cable management,
right,
as a new part. What kind of changes to your BIM workflow was there any particular challenges with the cable and raceway side? that you had to add into your workflows? Can you talk
Well,
a bit about that?
I'll be honest, the biggest challenge was P&ID actually, because this was one of the first projects for both those tools. Raceway and cable management, the challenge was just figuring out how it worked. Because I was at the November 2011, I saw it, we brought it home, and we put it on 2 projects. We said, yeah, we can get value out of this from the modeling. The benefit of Raceway was we didn't jump to integration of intelligent electrical schematics. We said, let's use it for what it can give us today, right away out of the box, and then we're still, to this day, looking at the best way to optimize getting from tools like Promise E into Raceway. So it was actually a smooth integration, and the fact that it's all DGN, that was great. This was also one of our first P&ID projects that had to be heavily customized. So that was a challenge, to figure out where in the PID schema, where do we update the tag, right? This is their tagging schema they want. Well, you go into the OP PID schema, finding all the instances where the name has to be entered for instruments and pipe pumps and everything. That was fun. So there was challenge there. But what I do like about the onboarding of these tools is we did take it step by step. So today when I have this diagram, plant space gets covered up with Open Plant Modeler. So we're slowly turning over all the rocks and building the integrated solution, but doing it piece by piece. And that really makes implementation easier. And again, the Adobe with iModel was another huge one that was just started when we were doing this project, and that brought dividends because it formed the shape of the deliverable, which was great.
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much.